to the Building Your Brand podcast, and I am here with another solo episode. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to talk about a client project that I finished recently because it was one of my absolute favorites. And I think it's made me realize what I love so much about my branding process, but also how I enjoy working with clients. And so I thought I'd chat about it. So the project was for a client called Sally Webster. She has a coaching business. She helps people with their relationship with food and nutrition. And she wanted to rebrand away from her name to Love How You Eat. And this project had multiple parts. So it was the branding to start off with, then it was a website for her, and then finally we created a physical journal, which she is going to sell and her clients will be able to use as well to kind of like document how they're feeling about food, what they're eating, their habits, all this kind of thing. So it was an amazing project to work on. And I think part of it was I realized that the projects that go really well is when there's this kind of relationship formed with me and the client where we really feel like collaborators and we're really connected in this common goal of creating this branding. And I think one of the sort of lessons that I've learned over doing this for the last, sort of 10 years, I've been a designer for longer, but sort of doing freelance client work, where I am managing the client from beginning to end, communication really is key. And, there's some instances in the past where I've fallen down on this, and I can remember a couple of examples years ago where, clients have been frustrated because I haven't necessarily communicated sort of in between deadlines what's going on or update them, when they should have been updated. And those were all sort of painful lessons that I had to learn. But when the communication works really well, it's incredible. And sort of it creates a very powerful sort of designer client relationship, in my opinion. I think for me, collaboration is such a huge part of my business. Like, it's really important to me. It's one of my values, like one of my brand values that I try and communicate as much as possible. And I think that actually really informs my process when it comes to branding. And I like to have the client involved at every point, giving me their thoughts and feedback. And I know not every designer likes to work like that. I think, some designers much prefer, I guess, more of a consulting role. Not consulting because they're physically doing the work, but they want the client to come to them for their expertise. They give it, the client sort of does what they tell them. And obviously there is an element of that with what I do. But I also feel so strongly about creating branding that the client is going to love. Like, they need to feel really confident about it. And it's not going to serve them if they don't feel confident to use it and implement it. And so I think having them involved in sort of every stage of the process helps to give them that confidence and helps them to really understand the new branding. And often, I don't know if this makes me sound bad, I don't think it does, but often I think that collaborative process ends in a much stronger result. I need that feedback from them to get the correct solution for them. And so I really value their input. And, occasionally there'll be instances where I'll push back and I'll be like, look, the reason I made this decision design wise is for these reasons, and that's where I can really input my expertise. And I can, I can say, look, there's a reason why I chose this font over that font or this color over that color. Let me explain why. I try to explain all the way through, but sometimes there's like a very specific thing where I need to sort of push back a bit and be like, here's the reason why I made that decision. But yeah, so this whole project with Sally worked really well. I think we have a very similar communication style. We actually ended up using WhatsApp. And I think for most people, they would hate that for communicating with their clients, but I actually love it. That is a form of communication that works well for me. So that's how Sally and I tended to communicate through the project. And I found it much easier using WhatsApp as a tool to keep her up to date, to ask questions as I was going, to make sure that I had all of the information that I needed. So that worked really well. One of the things that I've realized that I really value in a client, and obviously not everybody's like this, so that is fine, but I actually like clients who are really opinionated and are not afraid to share that opinion. So I think the worst feeling for me is when I get a sense that a client has an opinion or maybe doesn't like something but isn't feeling that sort of confidence to share it with me. And obviously that's something that I can work on and I can encourage them to do. But I've had a couple of what I would term dream clients recently. And what I've realized is, again, it comes back to that communication. I think the reason that they were dream clients is because they weren't afraid to tell me what they really thought. And as a result, I felt way more confident because I knew that they told me what they really thought. So I wasn't trying to, like read between the lines or work out what they actually felt, or, I wasn't trying to read their facial expressions. I mean, sometimes their facial expressions are very clear. Like I have one client who'll literally just reply and be like, yeah, I don't like it. And for some people, that might sound really harsh, but for me, it's not. It's that sort of clarity is kindness. I really appreciate the clear communication, because if I know she doesn't like something, then I know exactly what I need to do next. I can get the information that I need and I can move on with the design and I can make changes. And I personally much prefer that. It is a bit of like affronting at the start if you don't know the person, if they're very direct and they tell you what they think. But as soon as I know that about a person, then I just relax and I'm like, okay, I know where I stand. I know they're enjoying working with me. I know the process is going well and they have total freedom to share their honest opinion. So that's really interesting. So I guess just to give a little overview of what my branding process is like, it starts off with a questionnaire. So, well, no, actually, that's not true. It really starts off with the client call and we'll, sit down, chat through the project. They'll sort of tell me, I guess, verbally tell me the brief and what it is that they're looking for. And then they'll get sent a questionnaire basically for them to capture all of that information, but also expand on it. Because sometimes, they'll think of other bits of details, or the questions in the questionnaire will prompt them to share other information. And it's really good to have like a physical record of all of that kind of thing. So they fill in the questionnaire and then I tend to go back to them then with 2 mood boards. And at each stage of the process, I like to give my clients choice or something to compare, like either or. So I'll give them 2 mood boards that I think both answer the brief, but have a slightly different visual style. And then they will pick which one they feel is going in the right direction. So this is just to make sure that I don't go off down one particular route and then realize it was totally not what they had imagined. So the mood board, it doesn't typically have branding in it at all. It's often a mix. It's to get across like a mood, a vibe, a feel. So it'll have a mix of interiors, fashion, typography, colors, all of those kind of elements. So once they've chosen the mood board, then I go away, and this is a bit controversial, but I still create 3 concepts for my clients, and I will present them 3 different branding concepts, and they will I will do this on a call. So I will walk them through the concepts. There's usually mock-ups. It's quite fleshed out. They can get a good sense of like how the brand is going to look. And then we use that call to get their sort of initial feedback. So, I can see their sort of initial responses, their facial reactions, the first things that they say. I don't ever hold them to what they say in that call, because sometimes they then need to go away and they need to think about it a bit more and, mull over the designs. But I find it really helpful to be there when they're seeing those initial concepts for the first time. When I say be there, we do it over Zoom, unless they live near to me and then we meet up in person. So that is what happens next. And then from that point on, it's kind of like a back and forth of them giving me feedback, me refining, tweaking, updating the design, starting to apply it to things and make sure, it all works. Like I have had quite a lot of instances where maybe I've proposed a color palette, and then as I start applying that color palette, I realize that there's one color that I'm just not really using. And obviously, with the client, we'll decide actually that one can go. It's not really functional for the brand. brand, it's not really necessary. So that, that's an instance. Or it might be that as I'm applying it, we realize, oh, they need another accent font for sort of a very specific situation. And so that can be worked on and created. So yeah, it goes back and forth. And then once they have signed off the design and they're happy with it, it's a case of putting the brand guidelines document together. That with all of the logo files will get packaged up and given to them. And then it's any other assets that we've agreed on that I need to create for them. So it could be a business card, like social media templates, a pull-up banner, kind of whatever they need. Often the kind of list of things is bespoke to each client, and that is the process. And then they get given all of this and they are able to go away and run with it and use it. And I'll often send them up with a brand kit, so maybe in like Adobe Express, where they can then go in and access all of the elements, or they can, go and take the elements that I've given them and they can upload them into whatever tool that they want to use. So yeah, that's a bit of a behind the scenes of my design process, the kind of clients that I enjoy working with, and how this recent project has gone. It's definitely been one of my favorites. I've really enjoyed it. I am booking in clients for 2026. So if you think I would be a good fit for you and you would like to work with me, I would love to hear from you. I tend to work with micro businesses, small businesses, people who I guess would identify as solopreneurs, or maybe they've got a small team. I do not niche by sort of industry. So I've worked with a huge variety of different clients in different industries. So if you are looking for new branding in 2026, I would love to hear from you. I tend to have a sort of discovery call with people, and you can get a sense of whether you think I'm the right fit for you, and I can get a sense of whether I think you're the right fit for me. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to pop me an email, or you can come find me on social media and pop me a DM where I'm at Liz M. Mosley or at Building Your Brand Podcast.